Hey, you look, that's very smart. I
You
like
like
that.
it, huh? But don't touch me.
You said that last time
That's right,
I remember
honey.
I recently
I got
said,
it from
don't
you.
touch
You know,
me.
I watch everything you do.
Before the world knew her as the Queen of Comedy, Lucille Ball lived a life shaped not by laughter, but by longing. Behind the bright lights of the soundstage and the thunderous applause of I Love Lucy, she carried private stories. Stories of the men who lifted her, broke her, steadied her, and taught her what love could cost a woman devoted to her craft. Near the end of her life, in interviews, memoir fragments, and forgotten conversations with friends and journalists, she allowed pieces of these truths to surface. Not a scandal, not confession, just the quiet honesty of a woman who had lived enough to stop pretending. Today, we talk about 6 men who shared her bed, her ambition, her storms, and her silence. 6 names scattered across decades of Hollywood's most fragile and powerful moments, woven into the legacy she left behind. Watch until the end, because in number 6, she revealed the man with whom she first lost her virginity. Number 1. Desi Arnaz. Long before they became America's favorite couple, Lucille Ball saw something in Desi Arnaz that Hollywood could not quite define. He was rhythm and rebellion, charm wrapped in danger, a man who entered a room like a storm, breaking over calm water. In interviews later in life, Lucy admitted that she had fallen for him instantly, like a schoolgirl who should have known better. Their first meeting on the set of Too Many Girls in 1940 was electric. She wrote in her memoir, Love, Lucy, that she felt safe and terrified at the same time. A contradiction that would become the heartbeat of their marriage. Their love was volcanic, passionate, unpredictable, and tethered to a hunger neither could control. She woke in the mornings to Desi's tenderness, and went to bed with the fear that the world wanted to pull him away from her. He adored her brilliance, championed her vision, and fought for her place on television, insisting to CBS executives that I Love Lucy would not exist without the two of them together. Lucy later said, Desi gave me courage. He believed in me more than I ever believed in myself. But the same fire that warmed her also burned her. Desi's infidelities left scars she tried desperately to hide behind comedy. His drinking became the shadow following every bright moment of their lives. Friends recalled her sitting quietly at parties, watching him charm a room she no longer felt she belonged in. She confessed in a late-life interview that she spent years trying to save a man who didn't know how to stay. Yet even after the divorce, the love never died. Desi would famously say, I love her and always will. And Lucy admitted that Desi was, without question, the great love of her life, her greatest joy and deepest wound. Number 2. Johnny Daly. Before Hollywood shaped her into Lucille Ball, the brilliant force of nature the world would one day adore, she was simply a young woman searching for stability in a life marked by loss and uncertainty. Johnny Daly was one of the earliest men who stepped into that quiet, unformed chapter. Their relationship existed before fame sharpened her edges, before studios sculpted her image. It was a time when she craved tenderness more than applause. Johnny Daly is often mentioned only briefly in biographical histories, but in private recollections Lucy shared with friends, fragments later cited in memoir interviews, he represented something rare. He was steady, soft-spoken, and deeply attentive. He treated her not as an aspiring starlet or a struggling actress, but as a woman who deserved affection without conditions. Lucy once said that Johnny never made me feel like I had to earn love, a sentiment she seldom repeated about the men who came after. He met her during her early modeling and acting days in New York. Money was thin, opportunities were thinner, and Lucy felt like she was constantly proving her worth to an industry that saw her as disposable. Johnny became a quiet refuge. In those early mornings when she doubted herself, He reminded her that she had a spark the world simply hadn't recognized yet. But life in entertainment rarely allows young relationships to stay untouched. Lucy's ambition grew, and Hollywood pulled her westward. Johnny did not follow. He wasn't built for that world. She later reflected that some loves end not because they fail, but because life demands something neither person can give. Johnny was not a great heartbreak. He was a gentle memory, a reminder of who she once was, and the first man who showed her that she was worthy of love long before the cameras ever rolled. Number 3. Keith Andes. By the time Lucille Ball crossed paths with Keith Andes, she was no longer the uncertain young actress fighting for a role. She was Lucille Ball, a rising presence in Hollywood with a will of steel beneath her smile. Andes, tall, composed, and impossibly self-assured, entered her life during a chapter when she needed stability, but rarely found it. Their connection surfaced in several Hollywood accounts, and Andes himself once acknowledged in an interview that he had shared a deep fondness and trust with her during their time together. Lucille admired his discipline. He was a trained opera singer, a stage actor with classical roots, and a man deeply committed to craft. He lacked the recklessness that surrounded so many of the men she had known. In private discussions later in life, Lucy described Keith as the kind of man you lean on without realizing you've done it. He did not chase fame, he chased excellence, and she respected him for that. Their relationship developed quietly during the early 1950s. Quiet because Lucy was still married to Desi Arnaz, and quiet because Andes was not a man who invited scandal. He offered emotional steadiness during an increasingly chaotic marriage. Studio insiders later recalled seeing Andes on the I Love Lucy lot, always polite, always careful, always offering Lucy a moment of calm away from the whirlwind of Desi's affairs, studio battles, and the pressures of fame. And yet, despite their closeness, Lucy knew he would never cross certain lines. Andes held his integrity tightly, refusing to become the reason a marriage ended, even one already fractured by betrayal. In later reflections, Lucy hinted that Keith represented the life I could have had if everything were simpler. Still, their connection left a quiet imprint, a memory of balance, tenderness, and what love might have felt like without chaos. Number 4. Henry Fonda. Lucille Ball and Henry Fonda met long before either of them became Hollywood icons. In the late 1930s, when both were working under the studio system's demanding grip, their paths crossed during rehearsals, talent gatherings, and long studio days that blurred into nights. Fonda, reserved, introspective, and quietly intense, was unlike the fiery, charismatic men Lucy often found herself drawn to. In later interviews, she described him as a man who lived inside his own thoughts, someone whose loneliness felt both magnetic and unreachable. Their brief intimacy was referenced in several Hollywood memoirs, including accounts from contemporaries who recalled seeing them slip away for late-night drives or long conversations in studio bungalows. Lucy admired Fonda's seriousness, the way he approached acting with almost spiritual devotion. She once said that Henry carried a sadness he never tried to hide, and she found honesty in that sadness, a contrast to the manufactured glamour all around them. But Fonda was also fiercely focused on his career. The studios demanded everything from him, and he gave it willingly. Lucy, still climbing the ladder toward becoming a leading lady, sensed that they were both too hungry, too unsteady, to invest in a love that required vulnerability. She later hinted that their time together taught her a difficult truth. Ambition, when shared by two people equally driven, rarely makes room for a lasting relationship. Their connection faded not because of conflict, but because each of them was racing toward a future they could not yet see. Years later, when asked about him during a private conversation, Later cited in a biographer's notes, Lucy said, "Henry was a chapter, a quiet one, but even the quiet chapters shape you." Fonda remained a tender memory, a reminder of who she was before comedy crowned her queen, and who she might have been had life slowed down just long enough. Number 5. Gary Morton. When Gary Morton entered Lucille Ball's life, she was a woman rebuilt from the ashes of heartbreak. Her marriage to Desi Arnaz had ended in 1960 after years of public success and private pain, leaving her both liberated and deeply wounded. Gary, a stand-up comedian with a warm manner and little interest in Hollywood's competitive glamour, became an unexpected anchor. In interviews from her later years, Lucy often credited him with giving her a second chance at normal life, something she once believed was impossible. Gary did not carry Desi's fire or his chaos. Instead, he brought steadiness, showing up to rehearsals, business meetings, and hospital rooms with a reliability that surprised her. He respected her legacy, but never tried to live inside it. Lucy once shared that Gary didn't need me to be Lucille Ball. He liked Lucy. That distinction mattered more than the world understood. Their marriage in 1961 marked a turning point. Lucy was now the head of Desilu Productions, one of the most powerful women in entertainment. With Gary, she did not need to perform. She could rest, laugh quietly, and age without apology. Her friends later recounted how Gary often stood backstage during her Broadway stint in Wildcat, holding warm drinks, whispering encouragement, and reminding her that she owed nothing to anyone but herself. Yet Lucy also recognized the criticism their relationship attracted. Claims that Gary married her for money or access. She dismissed such accusations, saying publicly and privately that Gary kept me alive longer. Her memoir and interviews consistently praised his loyalty, patience, and the comfort he provided during her final decades. Gary Morton may not have shaped her rise, but he shaped her ending. He gave her the peace she spent a lifetime searching for. A gentler love after surviving a storm. Number 6. George Raft. Long before Lucille Ball became a household name, she found herself drawn into the orbit of Hollywood's most magnetic men, none more notorious than George Raft. Known for his gangster roles and his real-life ties to the city's underworld elite, Raft carried a reputation that should have warned any young actress away. Yet, in the early 1930s, when Lucy was still navigating showgirl roles and uncertain casting calls, his attention felt like sunlight on a cold street. Several biographers and Hollywood insiders documented their romance, describing Raft as protective, possessive, and undeniably alluring. Lucy later reflected in conversations quoted by friends that Raft had a dangerous sweetness, a blend of threat and tenderness that made her feel both shielded and exposed. He took her to exclusive clubs, introduced her to power players, and treated her with a seriousness few men had offered her at that time. He made her feel wanted in a city that made women feel replaceable. But Raft's world was built on shadows, whispered conversations, late-night disappearances, favors owed and collected. Lucy, despite her fascination, sensed the danger pressing in around the edges. She once confessed she liked him too much for comfort, meaning she feared what she could become if she stayed too close to him. Their affair burned quickly. Raft wanted her wholly, but Lucy already understood that her future depended on discipline, not entanglement. When her career began gaining momentum, she stepped away, choosing ambition over passion. Raft, for all his bravado, took the departure quietly. Years later, when asked about him, Lucy's smile carried a trace of memory. She described Raft not as a mistake, but as a lesson, a chapter filled with glamour, excitement, and temptation that showed her the difference between a man who dazzles you and a man who builds a life with you. In the final years of her life, when the cameras no longer demanded perfection and the world finally understood her as more than a clown in a polka-dot dress. Lucille Ball allowed herself a rare honesty. She spoke not of scandal, but of the hearts that shaped her own. 6 men, each carrying their own storms and salvations. 6 stories woven into the woman she became. Fierce, vulnerable, brilliant, and endlessly human. These relationships did not define her, but they revealed her. Her longing for stability, her hunger for passion, her fear of abandonment, and her courage to love again even after the world watched her break. In the end, her legacy was not only laughter, it was resilience. Which of these chapters moved you most? Share your thoughts below, and let the conversation continue in honor of a woman who lived, loved, and dared to tell the truth.